All right. I turn to my colleagues, and we've heard the testimony of all from the general public. And I guess the question I have is, where do we go from here?
Well, Mr. Chairman, if I may, I've heard a pretty common theme tonight about notification, a common theme about what the dollars and cents are at the other end of this, a common theme about the environment, and also a common theme about a rush to get this through. And I think maybe it's time to throw an anchor out. I do believe that all the citizens, all those 9,489 properties should be notified. I asked Mr. Ball that the other day, whether or not we had a database that would do that, and I think he believes that we do. I just don't think it's fair to them that this is getting thrown out at the last minute. So the first thing I'd like to do is make a motion that we notify all those properties. Am I restricted to 3 minutes? But included in that notification should be another public hearing down the road, because I think there's something we don't know, and that is what the economy is going to do at the other end of this. If it is in fact down zoning, which I believe it is, I think once assessments get done, the revenue stream to the county is going to go down, and the only way to solve that is to raise taxes. So I think we've got to do an economic study, not only on what it's doing to the individual property values, but what it's going to do to the county as a whole 2 years down the line, and how we're going to fix it, or how we're going to keep it from raising everybody's taxes. And we're talking about everybody in this county taking a hit, not just 9,489 properties, but everybody in this county at the other end. I mean, I certainly am going to propose that we do an independent economic study. And once we have that information, we notify all of these people, and we open up another public hearing after we know.
We're not in a work session right now.
No, we're not.
We need to make a motion on how we want to proceed, and then perhaps at that work session further. Do we want to leave the record open?
You need to use them.
We clearly want to leave the record open, but okay, we're not in. I would agree we're not in a work session, but I think I can make a motion that we put a stop to this for now.
A second.
Well, if you're making a motion, can we get a motion with more particularity so that therefore all the rest of the members?
I mean, my motion, first motion is that we get an independent economic study done on what the overall outcome is going to be when this is over. And with that motion alone, until we have those answers, we don't have to go any further. So I move that we have an independent economic study done on what the effect of this is going to be to Charles County. That's my motion.
Motion's been made.
A second. His motion.
Motion's been made and seconded to do an economic study of what it's going to, how it's going to impact Charles County. Is that correct, Mr. Cooper?
Mr. Cooper.
Well, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
It's Magoon, but yeah, that's so correct.
I apologize for that mistake. Okay, discussion. Nancy.
I'm not sure. What we're tasked here is to have a public hearing, and we've heard from the public. And what we're doing here is, I mean, this amendment, we need to make it consistent with the comprehensive plan. That's why we have a comprehensive plan that has been many years in the work, and there have been countless studies, and so I don't know exactly what you're asking for.
Sure.
And this process has been going on. I mean, the comp plan, we have a comprehensive plan. It has been adopted.
When we sent that comprehensive plan forward, when we specifically talked about this water conservation district, I talked about whether or not it affected certain zones and certain zoning. And we kind of whitewashed that and didn't really discuss it. And the commissioners came back with 1 in 20. I think we're making a huge mistake around the airport specifically, and everybody knows I've been a strong proponent for that airport and building around it. I think it has to have industrial property. I think it has to have commercial property to let it grow. And I don't see that. I mean, we didn't send 1 in 20 over as a group. That's what got sent back to us,
Right.
in a planning in a zone amendment. I don't agree.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah. Wait a minute. Did you have any? I know, Rosamond, you had.
No, please
okay. Go ahead. And then I'll get to Mr. Barnes.
I feel like we're kind of out of order here in our proceedings. This is a public hearing, and it feels like we're going into a work session. I'm not saying that these are not valid points, but I'm not sure that this is the place and the time to do it. We have been, the recommendation that what came into our packets was to either recommend an extension for public comment, or not. We don't know the cost of these studies. We don't have a lot of information, so I would not feel comfortable voting on something like that. That's, to me, something that should be postponed to a work session, not here in a public hearing.
Well, then clearly I don't think we can close the public comment or close the books on this until we've had that work session.
Can we get to Mr. Barnes, and then I have a question as well.
Well, I don't think that the motion is out of order from the standpoint that we're looking at closing it in 30 days. Well, we're looking at closing it before, adequate information's in for the public to be able to comment. So the impact study of the financial, impact on the county, a study on, really the boundaries. I mean, we have had countless people come up and have discussed the fact that they're not very familiar with what the boundaries are, and are those appropriate for implementation of the comprehensive plan. Comprehensive plan is a guideline. How it's implemented is what we're talking about doing now. And to do that, you should have adequate information. And I think the motion allows us to keep that record open until adequate information is provided for the people of this county to comment.
But I didn't hear a motion to keep the record open.
I recommend you amend that motion then.
We have a motion on the floor, though.
To keep the record open?
No, we don't have that motion. We have a different motion, which is yours, is to propose a study.
Mr. Barnes just said he wanted to amend that
I
motion.
would recommend that. So if you want to withdraw, I'll make that motion.
Go ahead.
Well, let's procedurally.
Yes.
Right.
Who made the motion? Who seconded?
I made the motion.
John seconded.
I'll withdraw my motion so you can place it on.
So I would make the motion. I'm
We
sorry.
have to vote on whether or not we
Yeah.
can withdraw.
Okay.
We got to vote on that. Okay.
Withdrawing the motion?
Yes.
Okay.
Motion. We need a second because you motioned to
I'm moving to
withdrawing.
withdraw my motion. Joan, you're going to withdraw your second?
If that achieves what we're trying to do, which is listen to what the public has said tonight and do something more than just plow ahead without taking their concerns into effect,
I think Mr. Barnes wants to amend it slightly and put it back on the
then I will withdraw my second.
Motion's been made and seconded to withdraw the motion of doing the physical impact in relationship to what it would have on Charles County. Is that correct, Mr. Magoon?
Yes, sir.
Motion's been made and seconded to withdraw that.
Correct.
Any further discussion on that motion? Council, are we correct in doing this?
This is it's running a little bit ahead of me here. If there was a motion that was made and was seconded, if there is a request to amend it, and it's a friendly request to go ahead and amend it, a second could be accepted as a friendly amendment, then that could go forward as an amended motion.
Okay.
And that's what I thought I was doing.
And I thought once the motion was made and seconded and recognized by the chair, it belongs to the
belongs to
commission.
the body.
That belongs to the body, and we have to vote on whether or not
I
to
see.
allow it to be.
To withdraw it?
That's why.
Yeah, no, I was just explaining.
Before we got to discussion.
Yeah.
Before we get
Before we get to Mr. Barnes' motion, so the motion's been made and seconded to withdraw it. Is
There we go.
any further discussion from anyone on this motion to withdraw? Go ahead.
Well, not necessarily to the motion to withdraw. We can finish this part of it, but I do have some comments that I'd like to make. It's up to the chair.
Is it on the
It's not,
motion?
it's not, yeah, it doesn't have to do with the motion.
Yeah,
It
let's
has to do
let's
with-
get the vote done, and then we'll
That's fine.
address yours, and we'll get to the other one. Okay. Any further discussion on this motion to withdraw? All in favor, say aye.
All right.
Madam Recording Secretary, will you please have the roll call on this?
Agree, withdraw.
I'm for the withdrawal.
Agree.
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 In favor.
I don't have to vote. So motion's been made and seconded, and it's been approved to withdraw it. Now we'll get to Ms. Daya's question.
Okay, so I just wanted to, I understand my colleagues' concerns regarding some of the issues that were brought up by the public, and I am concerned about that. However, I just believe that that is after we have all. I would like to keep the record open for 30 days so we can allow other members who have not been notified to be able to send in written comment. And after we are able to evaluate all of that, have a work session, and possibly at that point bring up other options of, sending it out to 9,489 properties, having another public hearing. I personally do not want to see this get, fast-tracked. There's no need for it. We need to make sure that we do it correctly.
I'm in total agreement with that.
And I will make a motion to leave the record open for 30 days.
Well, let's get Mr. Barnes. Any further discussion on this?
I just have one more question. Will there be another public hearing with the county commissioners once this is forwarded?
Yes.
I thought so. So there will be a second opportunity for the public to speak.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Mr. Barnes, can Joan speak before we get back to you?
I just wanted to say, as was stated by Mr. Magoon, that the Planning Commission did not send forward a recommendation for one house on 20 acres anywhere in the county. However, this was done by the commissioners. And I do believe that if we do keep the record open for 30 days, that within that 30-day period, there should be notification to all the property owners so that they, too, can have an opportunity to weigh in on this matter and not just not notify them and have others who might know about this situation send in comments. The 9,000 property owners should be given proper notification within this 30-day period.
And I would keep the record open for longer than 30.
I would agree that it could be.
All right, Mr. Barnes, let's address what you brought up earlier.
Well, the motion that I would bring up is based on everything that we have heard tonight and on many occasions when the public has come out and testified as to, their concerns. We've taken those into consideration, and I want to continue doing that. And taking into consideration the fact that people have not been notified, that they feel that their property rights are being assaulted, for lack of a better term, and or taken away, and that, really there hasn't been a basis for the area that was determined to be in line with the comprehensive plan, that we need to actually leave the record open. And I would say my motion would be that the record remain open until everyone that we that the county feels is in the WCD is notified as we would have any other person in the county notify someone of, something that they're trying to change on their property, that every one of them is notified and that they are given the rational information of how those boundary lines are drawn, as well as, some type of information on the impact of what the water conservation, district is going to do to that property. So at a minimum, the information that was used to make that determination should be provided to the people that are impacted. So I'm not saying necessarily a study, but at least the information should be provided to them. So my motion is to notify all of the personnel that are impacted, tell them what the basis for and provide the drawings that will give them the information of who's in it and why, and what the county believes the impact is.
Second.
Motion's been now.
And the record will remain open until that's done.
Go ahead, counsel. Motion's been made and seconded, and
Okay, so a piece of information that I need to make sure is really, really clear. Comprehensive rezoning, and certainly I hear what everybody else has come up to say and testify. Comprehensive rezoning is very different from the local map amendments, and as far as the legal process, I believe the county has followed it. I also understand that, and particularly given what it is that Mr. Ball has outlined, there have been other forms of notification. Granted, people have differing opinions on whether or not it was enough saturation to actually get the information out. I'm not quarreling with that or questioning that, but I do want to make sure it is, that the county applied with what the law required.
I would agree, counsel, but it doesn't make it right.
In addition to that, may I state
I think
that,
it's their interpretation. It's my opinion.
may I ask Mr. Barnes, how do you measure the time until the satisfaction of everyone being notified? How do you measure that? That's pretty vague.
Okay, I'm sorry, I can't amend it. So once all of those notifications are made, within 60 days after that, then close the record. So once they are notified, then give people 60 days to comment and then close the record.
So the number of days adds up to?
60 days after they're notified.
Okay, so how do we know that? I mean, are you taking into account getting notifications out?
No.
How will we know?
However long it takes the county to get notifications out, 60 days after that.
If I could, I would like to ask Mr. Kai Ziegler to share some of his experience, but also I will say that I've reached out to other jurisdictions as well. As far as comprehensive rezoning goes, they have not done individual mailings.
Good evening. Steve Kai Ziegler, Director of PGM. Our council is giving you very, very good information. I fully appreciate and understand the desire to notify individual property owners. The only jurisdiction I'm aware of, and I have worked in several in Maryland, as you're aware, that went through a process that we're talking about is in Prince George's, where I most recently came from. And their versions of a comprehensive rezoning process were called SMAs, or sectional map amendments. Some of you may be aware of those. And the county had a requirement, and it's the only one that I'm aware of in Maryland. We haven't researched all of them, but in anywhere else I've worked, and council has checked with several others, no other jurisdiction has a requirement to do that. Prince George's did. And I can say that I went through several of those exercises where we did attempt to notify every property owner. The databases are good, but not perfect. Whether they're registered or certified letters, we ended up, in every case that I was aware of, having about 20% of the letters returned, meaning the database was wrong, we didn't have the right property address, and or the property owner didn't accept the letter, or they were absentee property owners, all kinds of different reasons. I did not find in the staff in the Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission, and I would say in general, nor the community felt that that was a extremely helpful process in helping them understand what was being proposed by the Park and Planning Commission in terms of zoning. The notifications that went out were either, we attempted a variety of different ways, very short notices similar to a postcard, to very complicated letters explaining individually how the proposed zoning changes would affect property. in the vast majority of the cases, it caused more confusion than anything. And so that's one of the reasons where when we contemplated how we would begin this process, we did think about doing something that wasn't required in Charles County, which was to notify property owners. My experience has not been positive in implementing that. I'm also not aware, again, in any of the other jurisdictions that I've worked or that council has researched, that they've attempted to employ that, I think primarily because it's not a very effective way of notifying people. I think one of the things, and again, while at the end of the day we could do that, I think its impact would be minimal. That's my professional opinion. I think at the end of the day, you had a very good turnout tonight on a public hearing. There is going to be another public hearing with the county commissioners. If nothing else, one of the things that you may want to contemplate is that leaving the record open for some period of time. If you want to leave it open indefinitely, I don't know that that will work well with the legislative process and the commissioners, but that's certainly your prerogative. But that you have a very similar discussion that you're having tonight during your work session, and that your recommendations on these proposed legislative changes, whether it's to include more formal notification or want additional studies, could be made in the form of a recommendation to the county commissioners to consider as a part of their legislative process when it's time for their public hearing. Just an option for you to consider.
Having been in the mailing business in a past life, I can tell you now that databases are much easier to work with, and the post office itself has a move update that you actually run your stuff through. Mm-hmm. So we have a much better success rate with mailings today than we used to.
Well, my experience goes back only 6 months. It's not very long ago, and we did it multiple times.
Right.
Just so you're aware.
So I still believe they should be notified, and that's I seconded that motion, and I'm going to stand by it.
I guess my question would be if our database, if we feel our database is so inaccurate, how would we implement this anyway?
No, what we're talking about is individual addresses for property owners, which is different than a mapping process.
Oh, crap.
Tell them to order.
We need to order.
Please order. We're discussing something right here.
I am not suggesting that if the Planning Commission wants us to do that, you could ask us to do that, and I would suggest, my perspective would be that you recommend that for the county commissioners. If you want to undertake that now, that will probably add 3 to 6 months to the process that we're thinking about. I want you also to realize that we're currently working under transitional provisions, which have a lifespan of 6 months. We can probably extend that one more time, but beyond that, the shelf life of the resolution that ends up being the transitional provisions will probably have to go away. One of the reasons that we recommended that the transitional provisions be put in place is so that we could deal in an intelligent, informed, rational way with pending projects for the most part while this legislation was being considered. So those are things that all affect the timing. I also want to stress, whether we agree or disagree with what's in the comprehensive plan, the majority of the county commissioners adopted a comprehensive plan that called for the creation of a watershed conservation district that included a map that showed the aerial extent of that district. And so as staff, I believe we're obligated to proceed with the implementation of that district. And the best ways that we know how are to create legislation, a mapping process. We follow the law. We went beyond what is required. And I understand it may not be good enough for some. I appreciate that. I do. But we attempted to notify people using all reasonable means. The one method that we're talking about doing, the one person probably as staff who's had some experience that is me, and it hasn't been a very favorable experience as a useful tool in notifying people. And that's been my professional experience. And I could bring in a fair number of people with that I used to work with in park and planning who have gone through that many more times than I have, and it's basically a universally accepted position in that jurisdiction. And I'm not aware of another jurisdiction who attempts to do this in Maryland through comprehensive rezoning.
again,
There
I
needs to be-
appreciate your position and I understand it, but
There needs to be a consistency between the zoning and the comprehensive plan. So that's kind of the choice that you have. You either go forward with the zoning as the county, or you go back and amend the plan and remove that from the comprehensive plan. And I don't think
You
we're in
can't
that
remove it, but
position to
recommend.
want to even consider that after 5 years.
I just want the public to, I want these 9,489 people to know that this is happening to their property and their property rights.
That's what I think the main issue is. It's not trying to change something that the commissioners have done, but it's making sure that the public understands what has been done and what the impact to them is.
I'm very concerned about if Mr. Kai-Ziegler is correct, that if we were to try and notify everybody, because we have the document right now, I don't want to call it moratorium, but there's the document covering the Watershed Conservation District right now until we get this plan adopted. And if pushing this out 6 months, I think does a disservice to just about everybody.
Please, I ask. We're discussing this. You had your opportunity now. We're discussing this as a group to come to the decision. Please respect that. Any further comments?
Well, and I'm sorry, can you repeat the actual motion? Because it seems like it was two parts, or was it?
No.
So your motion is to keep the record open until everybody gets
Until everyone that we think is impacted is notified and told what the impact is to them.
How do you verify that?
How do you verify what?
Well, I mean, if you get 20% return rate of sending out documents, then that 20%. Does that mean we keep the record open until we find them?
No, I would say that they're pretty good at getting your tax bill out to you. So I think if they send certified letters to everyone that we have in the database, I consider that good.
Well, then that's not what your motion says, because your motion
I said
says
send it out to everyone that's impacted, and it's going to be based on the database. That's the only thing we have. So unless we have some other way to notify them, that seems to be the most rational and reasonable way to try and notify people.
I had some questions, if I may, about clarification. I was just taking notes on your motion, and I wrote down that you requested notification of all property owners, information on the boundary lines. Okay, we can do that. Information on impact of what it will do to their property. I don't think we can do that, because we would have to look at each individual piece of property to try and, for the majority of the properties, that anything that's developed, it won't have any impact on their property, except to make it illegal, non-conforming.
But there are a variety of different zoning districts involved with uses on the sites, and so doing individual assessments is not feasible with the staff size and time that we have.
And one other comment would be that if you want to keep the record open until this is done, that's fine. But what are we taking comments from these people? Is that what you would want to do? Allow them to submit written comments? Because we wouldn't be having another public hearing, so that we would be asking, just say, advising them that we had the public hearing, but we're soliciting written comments. Is that?
Well, that's what we would do now if we kept the record open for 30 days, correct?
We would allow for written comments.
Exactly. Yes, sir.
Okay. I'm just trying to
I think you have to encourage written comments. You have to say, listen, if you want your voice heard, you should write back.
Right, and there would be.
And we need to keep track
but
of that.
we cannot do the impact analysis of every property.
Okay.
I'm still a little confused on how we will know. How do you measure when a person has received, and will they be justified in answering the letter by presenting comment when there are no boundaries, no date, no hard dates to work with? I mean, is this on indefinitely or?
Okay, I can repeat it again. Once everyone, if we have 9,400 people, we notify them. So when 9,400 letters go out, I assume there's some time frame that, what is it, 3 days to, for a certified letter to write. It's the county, so it can't be that long. And then you keep the record open after that notification for the 30 or 60 days. That is a
big difference
defined time
between
frame.
a certified letter and just a regular mailed letter as well. We need to make that issue very clear. We would just be mailing.
We would do a regular
mailing. I'd be in favor of that if we're using the database that we have for the boundaries that we have.
Regular first-class mail will get there in 2 days.
Yeah, it'll get there. It should take less than that, I would hope. It's in the county.
What you may, this is just a suggestion, and it works, I think, within the context of the discussion, is that you take a step back. And that while we've had a public hearing tonight, you've learned a lot, and working with the staff and the community, that you've asked us to do a direct mailing, which we would do as soon as we can, provide enough information in a general way, and it's typically going to be on 1 or 2 sheets of paper. And that what we would do is once we send those out, we would work on scheduling another public hearing. That would be the way I would suggest that you do it, as opposed to letters that you would then receive and evaluate. And it would be as soon as reasonable after the letters go out. And I mean probably within 30 to 45 days after we send out the letters. And it's basically a reset from where we're at tonight. But then we would have made as good an effort as we know how to do to notify people. We have nothing to gain not by doing that.
Exactly.
And if there is some mix-up with a letter here and there, chances are the neighbors got one, and people are talking. They're notified. We schedule another public hearing as soon as we can in the near future. And we kind of repeat tonight, and you would have the assurance that as many people were notified through the way we're talking about as we could. The additional studies, I don't think we can do that in any reasonable time period.
Well, that's why I meant it to not really say the studies, but at least tell them what our basis was. We set boundaries. We had a basis for setting those boundaries. So explaining in the letter, what the impact, or maybe I shouldn't use the word impact, but what is
the extent of the boundary was, and that their property appears to be included within it. And the next public hearing is scheduled for this date. We're providing you notice of that. Here's our contact information. I think we can do that. What I'd like to do is whatever we do, that we stay on track. And again, the staff may be in a different position than the Planning Commission, and that we are working on implementing the comp plan directly as it was approved by the commissioners. And I understand that the Planning Commission, the majority of you or some part of you, were not in the same place with that. So we have, in our view, we have marching orders that we need to proceed with. If it means we take a step back to do additional notification, I think we can do that.
That's absolutely agreeable.
So would it be reasonable to say that all that can be done in 45 days?
I think we have to be working. We have to create the letter, which shouldn't be hard, include a map, and the correct type of information that we want to provide. And basically, it's to give people enough notice to know that there is a public hearing that may affect their property. My experience is less is better than more. The more information you include, the more you confuse people.
Yeah.
But that's my experience, and it may not be shared with everybody else. But when we send the letter out, we have to have picked the date when we will have the public hearing.
Absolutely.
Correct.
That's part of the notice.
Okay.
Which means
So that was
we
a
really
yes?
should be doing that this evening, I think, if we can.
If we can, yeah, I mean, I think, Steve, is a week to 10 days enough time for us to send out the letters?
A week?
A week to 10 days? Is that enough time for us
To get the mailing out.
to work with our database, create the letter, the notice?
Yeah, I think so.
So if we know we can do that in a week to 10 days, we can set the public hearing, your next public hearing date.
We have January 9th or January 23rd are the scheduled meetings.
So January 9th would probably work.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Go ahead, Nancy.
And maybe it's this, will everybody who's already testified be offered the chance to testify again, or would this be, okay. Great.
Yes, Joan.
I was going to say, I think the notification is a good thing because since much of what I've heard tonight is such that people think this WCD is taking private property for a public purpose, we have to do whatever is necessary when that is done, such as in eminent domain proceedings, and notify individuals. So I think that's a good thing that we will do that.
So we should be able to get a draft of the letter by the next meeting?
Wait a second.
No, I think we're going to be at.
Or are you going to try and send it before
I think
then?
we can handle the notification. We intend to do that as a result of what we're talking about in the next week to 10 days, which will put us, let's just say,
that's right, you did that.
the first week of December, the end of the first week of December. And if we schedule your public hearing for January 9th, which would be your second one on this with more notification, we can easily meet our required notification time periods for the local papers and other things. Correct, Steve?
Yeah.
And the public would then have approximately 30 days notice prior to the public hearing. And many would be aware now because we did have a number of people that come tonight and who are listening in on this conversation.
And there are a lot of people, there are several people that stood up here tonight and said they heard about it tonight, too. So I don't know everybody that heard about it tonight got the chance to get here. So.
Well, they'll have another 30 days with a letter to their property. And I don't know what else we can do beyond that, actually, for notifying people.
Okay.
I think that should
Okay.
notify a lot of the...
We have a motion on the floor that's been made and seconded, and we're at a discussion.
So we're gonna adjust.
Mr. Barnes, it gets back to your motion that included a hodgepodge of concepts to pursue. So I guess what we need to do is take that motion and I guess vote on it.
Well,
or do we help me out, the council?
Sure. Through discussion, there were some clarifications that were made that may prompt Mr. Barnes to want to refine the way his motion is, as I understand it. He was looking for notification. I understand that there was notification proposal that was made by the planning director and the director of planning and growth management, as well as the type of information that would be provided. Based on that, would you... I believe the other part of the discussion focused on the fact that the Planning Growth Department wasn't going to be able to provide information on the actual impact. That wasn't something that was going to be possible to be provided. So to that end, did you want to amend that motion?
I do.
And also keeping the record open for how many days?
Yes. I will amend the motion. And you said you could get the mailings out possibly by the 9th of December? Is what we're looking at. I'm trying to be specific on the... Yes? Okay.
Yeah, we'll shoot for that.
All right, so I'd like to amend the motion to state that the planning department would prepare and send out no later than the 9th of December notification to all impacted residents within the, as we know, the WCD, that will indicate that they are impacted or that there has been a change in zoning, and provide additional information about a follow-on public hearing to be held January 9th.
And I'll amend the second.
And the record would stay open 30 days after January 9th. Sorry, I forgot to put that part in.
The record stay...
Well, I think we should make that decision at that.
You make it on the night? That's fine. All right.
Make it that night.
Okay.
Can you repeat your motion, Mr. Barnes? I just want to make sure everybody understands the motion.
So that the planning department would send out notification to all of the impacted residents within the newly created WCD no later than the 9th of December, and inform them of a new or a public hearing to be held on January 9th.
Okay.
All right.
Does everybody understand? Do you want me to repeat that motion, or does everybody understand it? Sounds to me like it's send out the letter, get it out by December 9th, and then get it. Also included in that letter will be the public hearing on January 9th. And also, did you mention in there about leaving the record open?
Well, no, that'll be decided when you make the
Gotcha. Okay.
motion's made on January 9th.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion, and does everybody understand the motion? Go right ahead.
It might just be common sense, but in that letter, will you include that if they're unable to make the public hearing on January 9th, that they are able to submit written comment?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we can do that.
And it's assumed that the record would be open from now until,
Till after that
yes,
hearing.
anybody can send something in now, okay, until then. We close the record after the night.
Okay, motion's been amended and seconded. Any further discussion on it? And does everybody understand what they're voting on? All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it, and so carried. All right. That brings us to new business, and